Thank you. It's really inspiring to hear how important entrepreneurship is. And so, in fact, the interesting fact is we have thought about development around the world, and we pursued that through the states, through the governments of those countries. But 100 years ago, 102, 3 years ago now, Joseph Schumpeter wrote a book which basically claimed that entrepreneurship is development. And this is why I established a center at MIT, as Joyce was referring to, that has already put through 200 students who are aspiring to create companies, ventures, bottom-up development in their respective countries. And I want to start with that. And I have handed over the administration to other people, so I'm pleased that Professor Prasad still invited me because I'm not running that center anymore. Okay, but so it's great to be here. So just to give you a feel, here is a woman. Again, these are MIT students who are creating ventures. She created a company that is taking an organic oil from a nut in Morocco. And this oil is very good for your skin and other, your skin, and she's selling it. Here's an example, and creating jobs in Morocco. Here is Karan Singh, who has created a cell phone-based, if you have some kind of mental issues, in a sense, depression or other things, the telephone will read your behavior and send a message to your doctor, and the doctor can then follow up with the patient. Here is a woman from Nigeria. She has created a recycling company, and that's collecting people's garbage, so to speak, and sent into a recycler in a systematic way. And those who are depositing the garbage is getting points on their phones, which they can cash in at the grocery stores. And this is happening in Nigeria. And actually, there are 40 or so students who have created these companies in the last 5 years. And this student actually has been named as the Entrepreneur of the Year in the Mexican magazine. And he was our student too. So where did this come from? Let me give a little bit of my background and also the philosophy of this center. We are always thinking about how we can help poor people through charitable means and whatnot. But what we often ignore or overlook is that low-income people, poor people as we say, are actually a stimulant to major innovations. And this is a point that we often overlook. They're actually a very important resource for us to stimulate, to think, how do we innovate next? So, but before that, innovation, you see, this is the point that we are thinking about charity, but actually you have to think differently. And that thinking differently is not necessary. You cannot just march along like everybody else. But if you think a little bit differently, but how differently is really depends on what do the low-income people need, because there are many more of them. And that releases resources for the society. So I'll give you some examples, a historical perspective. Johann Gutenberg, he slashed the price of printing a book by 100. He didn't invent books. But what did that do? That allowed low-income people to purchase books. That only rich people read books at the time. And he unleashed probably the biggest social transformation in Europe more than 500 years ago by making that invention. He was, by the way, a for-profit entrepreneur. He was just trying to make money. And by that, he unleashed massive transformation, changes that we are all enjoying even to this day, okay? But what did he do? He saw only rich people read books. Perhaps more people of lesser means should read them. And that's why he created this massive transformation. So we should try to see what are the poor people bringing to us. They're bringing tremendous value that we're often ignoring. And my whole talk is more or less about that. So here's another example. Benjamin Day, he slashed the price of newspapers by a sixth. So what used to be 6 pennies became 1 penny around 1830s here in New York. Okay. And that created mass media. That's actually the beginning of mass media. Okay. Again, going to the masses. Here's Henry Ford. He cut the price of car making by a tenth. He didn't invent cars. None of these people are inventors of the product. Their main role has been cutting down the costs so that more people of medium and lower income can reach them. And here's Ray Kroc. He didn't invent hamburgers. He, in fact, didn't even invent McDonald's. But he took the McDonald's system, he systemized it, so that McDonald's could be put into all over the countries, and not only low-income people could buy hamburgers, but also ordinary people can get into the business of selling hamburgers. They're franchised and all that. This whole system, again, going towards the lower income, is actually, we are often thinking, how can we make money, therefore we should go to the rich people who have more money. But actually, there are vastly more poor people, and if we go in that direction, and what it does, if you can find, let's say car production used to be $10, now you make it to $1, then you have released the $9 for the rest of the society. So you have helped the poor person who can now buy a car for $1. I'm just figuratively saying. And you release the $9 for the rest of the society to do other things. And of course, you yourself became a successful entrepreneur. So this is a win-win-win model. And that's what is the ultimately necessary than to think that, oh, poor people need our help, they need our charity, and all these things. So this is why I created the Center towards developing countries. I myself was a developing person. And so that's how it all happened. So again, I'm trying to emphasize, what did they do? They cut costs. Now, they were all driven to make money, and their main roles were innovations and improvements, accountable business, and price reduction. Now, this kind of radical cost reductions are going on right now. It's not just history. Here's an example of a school in Kenya where their bridge school, American entrepreneurs have set up this system whereby slum kids can go to school and their parents can pay $6 a month for their education. And the program is delivering better education in terms of reading skills and math skills. It's for the 3-year-old kids to 8th grade program. And better means by about 30% better by certain measures. So for $6 a month. So even if you are a $1 a day person, you have $30 a month, and you have a family of 4, then you have, let's say, $100, $150 a month. It is possible for them to afford a $6 a month for a child. Here is Bcash I talked about, 3 million transactions taking place a day, okay? And for pennies, people are sending money from one place to another over hundreds of miles. Here is M-Copa, which is allowing equipments to be leased at a very low cost. And if you have any questions, I'll tell you how. Here is a person who created a hospital in India where you're getting heart surgery for $1,000. And this surgery is not, by the way, lower quality. It's just that doctors get more practice. And again, the poor people are bringing volume. Because if you have let's say, a good hospital right here, let's say George Washington University, maybe they have 5 surgeries, heart surgery a day. Here they have 50. Same equipment, same hospital building. Therefore the doctors get more practice and they get better. And the interesting thing is that what we need to see, poor people are supplying you the volume. Without that volume, you couldn't do it at that lower price. So innovations also means you could leverage technologies. And Joyce was kind enough to mention that I thought about mobile phones some 25 years ago. In fact, I did, okay? But what I'm saying is, what is a fascinating phenomenon? Even yesterday in Washington Post, there was an article, the smartphones are getting smarter than you, or something like that, and that it is scary, okay? Which is true, it is scary. But the point is, imagine, and there was an Economist cover story just 2 months ago or so, that says 80% of the world population will have smartphones by 2020. Just imagine the phenomena. 80% of the world population, not just the first world phenomena, okay? And massive computers that are somewhat million times more powerful than the computer that sent man to moon. This is the way the technology is moving forward. And so you could leverage these technologies to create new facilities. Like every little thing is changing right here. Uber. I just took a taxi for the first time this week. Uber taxi, okay? And the Uber company is valued at $60 billion. Again, another little software, some app, some kids have done. It's amazing. So here are the ways why you could see the technologies can, first of all, technologies empower everybody, okay? If you can use, you can get more done, okay? And it gives you a win-win-win model. The person who is using it gets more productive. The person who is selling it has an established business, and your country moves up because everybody has become more productive. Actually, there's a fourth winner. The rich countries like the United States can sell the innovations, and we also improve. Because after all, America needs to move forward in its ladder. What it often does, it protects the dying industries. But actually, instead of protecting those dying industries, we need to move up the ladder. So the other can pick up the lower rung and move up. But by protecting the lower rungs, we're often preventing the other countries from climbing into the ladder. So the technologies are a win-win-win, and one technology has profoundly altered the world that we are not even realizing, that the effects of the cell phone and the internet in particular. But if you are aspiring to be an entrepreneur, and you should see yourself as a surfer, what is the wave coming that you could then surf on that wave? Because otherwise you cannot plan on the strategies. And you cannot possibly make the wave alone. The waves are coming, whether it is cell phone or smartphones or maybe some biotechnology phenomena, something. Then you can say, there's that wave coming. How would I really plan on surfing? Because entrepreneur needs to see themselves that way. And also, in poor countries, many things have not done. So you could have a first mover advantage that you would not do if you did not understand the technology. And by the way, as Secretary Iqbal Quadir said, that there are so many complicated problems in developing countries, which is very true. But one of the problems is that some people are more powerful than others. They don't have a level playing field as we do here, okay? And if you are a student and you have a technological know-how, that levels the playing field because the incumbent has not seen the opportunity through the technology. And this is why technology actually for a young entrepreneur, in fact, if you go to a developing country, most people who have the money, they're usually a family business, and they would rather fund their cousin or a nephew or somebody than just funding as an angel investor some young man who walks in, okay? But that lopsided situation, that uneven playing field, you could make it to the more level by having a technological advantage. And of course, you could leapfrog a lot of things. For example, the fax machines came and went. But so you don't have to follow the same sequence of things as they did in this country, okay? And of course, again, the secretary mentioned about the young people. There are a lot of young people there, and they are very tech savvy. And so that's another very interesting phenomena, that technologies like Facebook or internet or cell phone have spread around the world. But young people are also a big part of that population. And they're the ones who are savvy about the technologies. So if you are leveraging the technologies, I think you will have an easier time trying to proliferate something. So let me give I aspired to be an entrepreneur, and I struggled for years to succeed at something. And I was telling Dean Joyce Russell that that's how I lost my hair. But the point is, through that process, I tell you, I learned few misconceptions people have about developing countries or their problems. And I thought maybe it's good to list them. So of course, before going back to that, I was also inspired by the phenomena of what is called the Moore's Law, which just in the last week's paper you will see is celebrating its 50th anniversary. The Moore's Law, Gordon Moore, started in 65 or so. He founded Intel. He said every 18 months or so, the microchip's power is doubling. I mean, it's a more complicated thing, but it can be summarized that way. So it basically roughly is the cost of processing power going down by half. So every 18 months or so. So that means every 3 years it's going to 1/4. Every 6 years it's going to 1/16. And I'm at MIT, I do this math often. My point is, you will see through this very geometric progression, every 10 years or so, every 12 years, it goes down to 1,000. Unbelievable. And so this is a Gutenberg effect in front of us. That was what mobilized me, okay? And so I said, the big computers are becoming laptops. Laptops is going cell phone. This phenomena is what we can really harness and make something happen. So one of the misconceptions is the poor countries are under-resourced. This is terribly wrong. Actually, I got unleashed when I got, the problem is they think money is the solution. It is not. Actually, the people are the main resource, and poor countries generally have more people, okay? But I myself was unleashed by the fact that in my office, my computers got disconnected. And it reminded me of a day in Bangladesh when I was a kid, that how not having a phone, I wasted a day, okay? So disconnections disables, and connections enables, okay? So the time, for example, is a very important resource. So poor countries like Bangladesh have 24 hours a day. America has 24 hours a day. So if Americans get more done within those 24 hours, and the Bangladeshis get much less done within the same 24 hours, obviously they will keep falling behind. Okay? So time is a very, very important resource. And there are many other resources that are being wasted. Okay? So I see poor countries as extremely wasteful countries. Okay? But again, if you see it that way, it will unleash new thinking in your mind. And that might help. I'm restating the facts in some ways, but it's just a different perspective. Another one is the poor people lack the buying power. Again, why bother about that? Because if somebody, I bought a car last year that I paid nothing down. They are happy to sell me a car. I take the car takes me to work, the work pays me a salary, and the salary I then pay for the car. So the car at least co-paying for itself. I'm paying, but it is the car also paying for itself. So tools that make you more productive should be seen as a self-paying device, okay? And it is making you productive. I went through all of that before. And that's the way to look at it. Then you don't have to worry, oh, poor people don't have enough money. By the way, our Isaac Singer did this, okay, about 150 years ago, okay? And he not only made people more productive, okay? People were able to earn more, therefore they were able to pay, and he also found a way to pay for that. In fact, he is the inventor of microcredit, okay? And so you can facilitate the consumer in some other ways that will help him pay for itself, and his productivity goes up, and all these good things happen. And you need to start money to make money. This is also not true, that you have to have money to start making money. You know, like I need a banking service, but I'm not trying to buy a bank to get a banking service, okay? Somebody has bought a bank, and everybody else gets a banking service. So it is possible to buy a device that serves the whole community. You don't have to own it yourself. For example, cell phone. I mean, when phones first came out in the United States, they were community-based devices. They were people certainly didn't carry around, didn't even own a phone per household. And income. People were saying, no, you know, if you're thinking about poor countries, you should first solve their food problem, then solve their housing problem, then their health problem, all these things. Why? Why don't we just increase their income? Then they will solve their problems, okay? This is another very important point. We don't have to be the big brother to decide how other people should order their lives. This is, by the way, a pointer to another very important problem in the world, the huge waste of brains. Everybody has a brain, and nobody has two, nobody has zero. So it is very democratically distributed resource that needs to be unleashed. And usually, if you have money, you use your brain to decide how to spend that money. And perhaps you think, how do I earn a little bit more? So what I think this kind of thinking, I mean, everywhere I went, they said, you know, you should first think about solve these problems. The point is, I don't think we need to. We should just increase people's income, find ways they can increase income. That at least simplifies the problem. And then it activates other brains. And there's another general notion, and I as an educator has to be careful about this, that we try to make our students experts of something. But I'll come to this point. Generally, experts are teaching us this and that. But it may not be true. Actually, poor people are good teachers, which I'll come to right now. I mean, a little bit later. But I want to show you that I wanted to spread the cell phones in Bangladesh because I believed the Moore's law that I showed that were going down. And that's why I worked for several years, convincing a microcredit organization, Grameen Bank, that they can help me spread the phones. And this is how I did it. Basically, a microcredit program is a poor person borrows money, then she buys a cow, typically. It could be a duck loan, could be chicken loan. But typically, it's a cow loan. The cow gives milk, and she sells the milk in the village and pays off the loan. And so basically, what I proposed is that the cell phone could be a cow. And then it becomes a phone for the whole village. It becomes a business for somebody. That was the initial arrangement through which Grameen Phone spread. Okay. And this arrangement eventually, again, it took years to do this. But arrangement eventually led to these 300,000 women selling phone services in their respective communities. Okay. Eventually, after 10 years or so, everybody has a phone now. So then they have graduated to other businesses. And that's the one you were describing. This has 50 million subscribers now, but the country as a whole has 110 million phones. And the bKash that I showed is helping people go back and forth with money and everything. Okay. Okay. And this is an emergence bioenergy, which is helping farmers use waste to produce methane that can run on engines and produce electricity. It's still in a pilot phase, and so I won't waste your time now. But I want to say this point that you have to participate to understand. We cannot decide how to solve problems from here, okay? And that's another reason it's important to have entrepreneurship training and everything, but people should be coming from their respective countries because they know the context better, okay? So here is one important point. So here I want to show you how I learned. I won't take very much longer. How I learned in my way that what these countries need. I came to this country some 40 years ago, but about 25 years ago, when my phone idea was going on, I used to live in New York. There were a lot of these DV1 visa Bangladeshis driving taxis. We're in the transportation business in New York. Most taxi drivers are from Bangladesh. Many of them are, okay? And I have learned when I was a little bit younger that aid and all that needs to help these countries. I worked in the World Bank for 2 years, very close from here. And when I saw these people coming, something clicked in me, and I said, this is not true. People are coming across the oceans, across the continents, going through many odds to get here, okay? And I myself had a Bangladeshi passport in those days, and I could not quite easily go to Europe and all these things. So the point is, far from aiding the poor, we're actually afraid of them, that they come here and take our jobs. And they do come here, okay? And not necessarily they are invited to come here. They're coming because they smell a little bit of an economic opportunity out there. Vague knowledge, cousin or somebody is telling them, okay? So what I'm trying to say, the desire to improve your conditions is very strong in poor people. We don't need to aid them. We need to create opportunities so that they automatically embrace it. They don't have, last week I hear, my goodness, people are crossing the Mediterranean to get to Italy, to Spain. This desire is so profoundly strong. So the aiding premise is profoundly wrong. It's really that, and then we worry about immigrants coming to these countries, et cetera, et cetera. But actually, this is a demonstration of human aspiration. And that aspiration can be met by creating opportunities back at their home. And they're overcoming. There may be 5 of them coming, but 95 are not coming because they're more timid or something. But the point is, there is that aspiration, clear proof. Now, and when I talked to the big bureaucrats and important people, etc., I heard that no, cell phone is the last thing you need because this is a yuppie device in this country. I mean, I'm giving you history to see something else like that can happen. So yeah, this is a yuppie device. Only 1 or 2% of Americans had a phone in those days, mobile phones. But as I was in the plane, getting to Bangladesh, coming back and forth, I see immigrants coming back and forth, just like the taxi drivers, okay? They were telling me that they need to communicate with their families. Do you see my point? So what is necessary, you cannot possibly imagine unless you interact with them, unless you participate with them. So here is another story. Their ability to pay on near zero cost? No. I finally settled down back in Bangladesh, and we had a maid. This is normal. And then one time the maid asked me to mail a letter for her, okay, to her mother. And I want to tell this story because at that time I was struggling with this idea. Oh, I hear all this, the poor people need very low price, okay, or free. Service should be free, okay. But you need some money to sustain your network. Cell towers, switches, engineers, all these things, right? So you always create a volume of business you might have, and that business has to sustain the infrastructure you create, okay? So I just doesn't meet that if I make it 1 penny, it cannot sustain that. And if I make it 4 pennies, maybe there will be fewer calls, and then you need actually lesser infrastructure to sustain that, okay? So it's a vicious cycle that if you reduce the price, okay, you will not be able to sustain an infrastructure behind it. And you know what? This maid solved this problem for me because the maid said, mail me a letter. And I said, fine, give me the letter. And as I was walking out of the door, she said, please don't put any stamp on it. I couldn't understand. Why? Why couldn't I put a stamp? It's the equivalent of 20 cents or something, okay? She said, no, don't put a stamp on it. It will not get there. But if you don't, it will. And what is the point? The point is that if you don't put a stamp, then it gets recorded in the postal system, and the mailman is bound to deliver it and collect twice as much from her mother, from the recipient. Okay, but this is true in India? Yeah, so this is true in Bangladesh. So the point is, you collect twice as much, so the woman, instead of getting a free service, is actually willing to pay twice as much. You know why? Because they need a service. Because not having a service is far more costly. Far more costly. In Bangladesh, I hear, no, make water free. But if I get free water, I'm just giving another analogy. If you get free water and you get sick and lie in bed for 5 days, you lose your job, you lose your income, okay? It's much better to pay 1 rupees and have a water that doesn't make you sick. Then you can work for those 5 days and easily pay for the water, okay? So what I'm trying to say, this maid taught me that no, far from near zero cost, they're actually willing to double the price, as long as you actually provided damn service. And that's what changed my thinking. Okay. And here's another one. I somehow managed, those days Bangladesh is not supposed to be not a business place. In fact, at some cell phone companies I went here in America, they said, no, we're not Red Cross, we don't want to go to Bangladesh, blah, blah, okay? And so I somehow managed to raise $100,000 to pay for my plane flights all over the world to get a cell phone company to get going. And, but they also said, you need a market research, okay? And I can do market research myself, but the point is, a credible market research would cost me, in those days, $150,000. And that's beyond my budget, okay? And then I could not, so I couldn't get that money. So here's one time, my mother solved this problem for me. What happened is that I was about to leave to go to New York. I was shuttling between Dhaka and New York. And she said, as soon as I got out, she said, call me as soon as you get there. Okay? I said, okay. And as I was in the taxi to the airport, I was thinking, why did she say that? Because 20 years earlier, that reminded me, 20 years earlier, I went to America to go as an undergraduate, as an 18-year-old, okay? And she tolerated for a month before she got a letter from me. Because I traveled through Europe, slowly I came here, wrote a letter, she got it, et cetera, et cetera. And now she's saying, call me as soon as you get there. Didn't make sense to me. Actually, I'm much less likely to get lost now. Okay, I had a US passport, I had credit cards, whatnot, and I know more, etc. And she certainly did not love me more because I have committed more sins in between, etc. But what I'm trying to say is that why did she say, call me as soon as you get there? There is no answer other than the fact that it is now possible. So people don't think. See, the real problem is, if you think in a way that you have to, like the entrepreneurs, we have prejudice everywhere, but the entrepreneur has to have forjudice, not prejudice, okay? They have to think how it will be. And that, by the way, counters the old-fashioned prejudice also. But what I'm trying to say, but you need the forjudice to see how the world will be. So if you invent an elevator and went to Manhattan 150 years ago, whatever, and you would say, would you need anybody elevator? Everybody would say, no, we have short buildings, we don't need elevators. The point is, if you have the elevators, then people will start building tall buildings. But main education we need to give is how to look at the world and reinterpret it every day. It is not a question. That is, indeed, there is an education. But it is not giving expertise. And the poor people liberate us from those expertise. See, here's the point, that we make models in our mind, but then the models cage us, okay? And how do we liberate ourselves? And poor people don't know, luckily they don't know our models. So they give us pointers. This is what's happening. That is the reality. And so they liberate us from our own cages, from our own models. And this is why I think the poor people not only are a stimulant to innovations, but also they can help you, give you the pointers how to go about it. And so the way to do it is you innovate, you leverage new technology, and you observe and listen. Thank you very much. Do I take questions or do I go? Okay, sorry. Okay.
What about now? There we go. So first off, thank you, Professor, for joining us today for the Emerging Markets Forum. My question has to do with the trend of your presentation seemed to be how technologies created in developed countries can become lower cost and be widespread across more developing countries. But anecdotally, that seems to be shifting, and technologies are being developed for developing markets, and then the reverse, coming to developed countries. And I wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
It can happen anyway. You know, the point, by the way, Henry Ford, who I just quoted, was almost illiterate. He had third, fourth grade education, okay? But he he played with the machines for a while and all these things. So what I'm saying is innovations can happen anywhere, to be honest, okay? But what I was also saying is that one way to help poor countries is to capitalize on the global economy, which is spending billions of dollars of R&D in developing, let's say, cell phones, okay? So that is a massive possible help, aid, whatever you call it, towards the poor, if we capitalize on the innovations that are taking place as a consequence of the billions of dollars of R&D money. That's one point. But the other point you have to also see, just in case, there are many aspects of this, is that the way I arrange the ladies' retailing telephone service, or bKash has agents, we're also capitalizing on the low-cost labor of those countries. Okay? So we are actually combining the local economy and the global economy to bring a service that is useful to the people. That's the summary. But yes, of course, many innovations can take place in poor countries that can come here.
Thanks.
Guy Pfefferman, Global Business School Network. Iqbal, I'm very frustrated by the fact that in the last 10, 15 years, even with the internet, with all this, nobody has, to my knowledge, managed to produce a cell phone-based system of dispensing useful education to the masses in various areas. That is also a sustainable business model.
Yes.
And I would be willing to spend the rest of my life with you and other people to get this done. But why has it not happened?
Okay. First of all, it did a little bit happen. Let me show you this. The Bridge International, one of the 10th or 12th slide I showed, education in Kenya, where there's $6, is they're using Nuke, which is just another version of this phenomena, okay? And that is, the curriculum is being delivered through that, and even the teachers are being monitored through that. And people are paying through system like bKash. So the efficiencies that the cell phone is bringing, see, cell phone is actually a computer, okay? And the Nuke is another computer. It's just the same phenomena. But what I'm trying to say, it is actually happening in different guises, but very small, yeah. But again, they maybe the 800 million kids don't have good enough education system. And what Bridge International has done is that they have computed that at that $606 a month, it's a $52 billion business, okay? Now, it's happening. And I, by the way, wrote a case on another education outfit in India. I'll forward you that case. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah?
Hi, my name is Rahul Shah, a part-time MBA, Master's in Finance candidate here at Smith. So my question, do you think that these innovative solutions will come to market in the years to come by local entrepreneurs, or what kind of role do you think multinationals can play in this?
Multinationals, they're big and resourceful and all that. But, look at America. Aren't there a lot of challenges coming from little entrepreneurs? Right here, okay. Uber is not invented by a big corporation. There are reasons. There is a little bit of a poetic justice in this, okay. Maybe nature has designed it this way. What happens, rich and powerful becomes comfortable with their rich and powerful situations, okay. And they don't necessarily think in a way that would create new value. Those who are trying to enter the game are unleashed to be more creative, generally speaking. And there's another problem. Another problem is that inside a big corporation, if one division often gets jealous of another division and often kills the innovations taking place inside the organization. In fact, since I'm in Washington, Billy Mitchell is, if you Wikipedia search, Billy Mitchell, senator, he was the son of a senator, was a general, he was the general in the US Army. He is considered the father of the US Air Force, okay? But in fact, he was court-martialed. In fact, there's a movie on his court-martialing, played by Gary Cooper, okay? Billy Mitchell is considered the father of the US Air Force. And the US Air Force ultimately came into being officially, okay? When in the Second World War, we used planes, but they were part of the Navy. The US Air Force came into being in 1947, officially, okay? And 30 years after the proposal, and 10 years after Billy Mitchell had died. So what I'm trying to say, we human societies are factious, playing one against another. And so sometimes an outsider can create a good value from out there. So anything is possible.
Thank you.
Yeah? Okay, thank you. Actually, there's the lady just raised hand, so I will answer. Yeah.
Sorry, one more question. This is Chiang from the World Bank, sitting in the profoundly around aid that part, and also the first year part-time MBA student with the Smith School. So thank you very much for giving us those very inspiration examples. So I think my question is, based on your experience, have you ever seen examples that, based on those entrepreneurs and those innovations, have further impacted the government system in terms of, for example, education and health, so that they get some indication from those innovations and change their policies and further impact a larger group of people at national level? So I'm very interested in hearing.
The changes are constantly, human society organizations are interacting with others and adjusting continuously. Even in Bangladesh, there was a BRTC, an organization for overseeing the mobile operators, were created after the mobile phones companies have come about. This is a natural phenomena. Things happen, then people change, and then they change the legal system. This is not true, that the legal system is ahead of the innovations. By the way, the US Constitution did not come about in 1776. It came about in 1789. After the country, our first president, George Washington, was not president in 1776, 77. Okay. He became president I believe in 1791 or 90, after the Constitution. So 14 years we existed without the Constitution. So what I'm trying to say, things happen, then people recalibrate, reorganize, create a new structure. It's very normal. Happens all the time, I would say. It's a matter of doing research. It's a myth that we create the whole system first, and then people will dance underneath. People start dancing all sorts of ways, and then we create the stage. This is normal, by the way, contrary to the myth. Okay. Thank you very much.